Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
You know, there are words out there that we tend to shy away from, or they just kind of, they make people wince, if you will. And I got to admit, networking is one of those words. When I tell people, well, I'm kind of a networking expert, I help people network, they kind of roll their eyes like, oh man, people are sick of networking. Well, they're really not. I mean, you talk to small business people and they network. And it's all, one guy hit me with, I remember he said, well, we don't network where I'm from, we build relationships. Well, I get it. It's tomato, tomato. It's really kind of the same thing. And it's all the definition of what you hold in your head and your heart. Other words that are similar to this are like the word drugs. You hear the word drugs. And some of these things come in favor, and sometimes they fall out of favor. We get this negative connotation with respect to drugs. It's like, oh my gosh, the guy's a drug addict. Well, it depends upon, there are prescription drugs that people take lawfully and responsibly, and that's okay. Hypnosis is another one. It conjures up images in our head of somebody being duped onto stage, put in front of a watch that puts them in a trance, and the next thing you know, they're quacking like a duck at the snap of a finger. And I was actually talking to Karen Ross, a friend of mine, because that's what she does, and I said we need to have a different word for this because people you spend so much time trying to convince people it's not that. But anyhow, the other word, this leads into my guest today, is bragging. Oh, that person brags. Oh my gosh, everyone rolls their eyes like it's a horrible thing. Well, today my guest is Jeanette Sibley, and Jeanette is a talent advisor and a leadership results coach. She's got 30 years of experience guiding bosses on hiring, managing, and coaching their employees for results. Along the way, she's guided the creation of 3 millionaires and helped thousands of business owners and professionals work effectively with their bosses, teams, and customers. And what does that have to do with bragging? I'm bragging about her, but she wrote a book called It's Time to Brag: 5 Amazing Steps to Sell Yourself. And as we're out there networking, we need to sell ourselves. We need to brag. You might not like the word. Give it a different word. I don't care. Call it quack like a duck, but we need to brag. And so I wanted to get Jeanette on here to talk about, hey, it's time to brag. Jeanette, welcome.
Oh, thank you. I love your intro and your lead into this. And like Walt Whitman said, it's not bragging if you've done it.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So what prompted the writing of the book?
Oh, my goodness. Prior to that, I had been unemployed, self-employed, all this stuff. And I was helping others in finding work or finding sales leads and things like that. And the thing that I always ran into were people minimizing what they had accomplished. And so what happens is they have people who are being given the awards, winning the sales, getting the jobs that were less qualified. And so it's like, okay, there's something missing here. And then I personally went through that where I was being nominated for an award with the National Association of Women Business Owners back in Detroit. I'm currently in Denver. And what happened was the marketing people that were writing up my nomination form kept saying, we need something more specific. We need something more specific. And I go, I don't know how to be more specific. And then it dawned on me, that's what bragging's about. Mm-hmm. Be really specific about what you've achieved, then you're going to win the award, which I did. So that was the good news. But it really taught me that a lot of times men and women, particularly women, fail to share what they've accomplished. And a lot of times that's because we were taught when we were kids, it's wrong to brag. It's wrong to say, hey, I did that. I did this well. Look what I've achieved. And I know, back with the baby boomers and things, it was more of a mom said not to. But today you have the added pressure for Gen Zers and Gen Xers and Yers that run into the problem of they have peer pressure, team pressure, where it's we, it's not I. If you're not saying we did this, even though we didn't do this and I did do that, then you're not part of the team.
Yeah.
And people consider you to be a braggart. And I remember when I published my first book, It's Time to Brag, back in 2009, they said, oh, Jeanette, you don't want to use that word brag. Oh, no, that's negative.
Yeah,
said,
just like I said, right? I mean, people.
Exactly. I thought maybe you were doing some tea leaf reading there for a moment.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what they said. And I said, but that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And now brag is a really big word. I mean, a lot of people use that word now to say, hey, I've done this.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to pat myself on the back because you know what? If I can't sell myself, no one's going to be able to do that for me.
It's interesting. I've had this conversation with my daughter. I have two boys and a girl. They're all in their 20s, all out there, gainfully employed. Knock wood that continues. But you're always welcome home. But I've had her say, accumulate your experiences, note these experiences, because she works for a professional women's soccer team, and she said some really unique experiences that could be buried in the whole notion of, well, I do communication for the team. Yeah, you do, but these are all the things. You are part of this. You were asked to work this championship. You were asked to do this, and just to kind of put these things out there. You're not just run of the mill. Thousands of other people do this. And I think it's been helpful for her. I don't know. So we'll see. 5 amazing steps. Can you share them with us? Give us some stories. You don't have to give them all the steps, but I want people to buy the book.
Well, we want you to buy the book, of course, and it's not that hard. It's what I call the KTAs. The first 3 steps are knowledge, talent, achievements. So the knowledge is everything that you know.
Yeah. And
I've had people say, well, I'm only in my 20s, so I really don't know anything. I said, well, I worked with people as young as 13. That 13-year-old was being bullied. And his mom didn't know what else to do. So she used my brag book and said, here, let's go through this together. And he felt so much better about himself. And I've worked with other teenagers. I've worked with people as old as 80 who had the same conversation that I've not done anything, which is really sad. But what was interesting is the teens were able to fill out more than just one piece of paper. I mean, they filled out a lot. And one of the keys is to write down your responses. So when you're writing down your knowledge, your talents, and your achievements, write them out. The University of Michigan had done a study that said when you write, you engage your brain differently. And that's needed because, like you were talking with your daughter who said, well, I'm in communications. Huh? Well, you do a lot more than that. Oh, my goodness. And so engaging your brain differently is critical. So anyway, you write down all that knowledge that you know, and it could be something like engineering or networking or sales or human resource or gardening or parenting or, having a rescue cat, like whatever, right? Then on the next column, you write talent, and that you put in your verb. So with a cat, I could say I adopted a cat. That starts with a verb. Adopt is a verb. In sales, I could say I've sold, I sell, I present, I prospect, like that. So you use your verbs and stay out of the stories. It's amazing how what really takes away the energy of our brags is when we get into the stories or the how we did it. And then, like and for those who are going, I don't know what she's talking about. I said, well, think for a moment, if you've gone to a networking meeting, you got 30 seconds to introduce yourself. And that person's still droning on 3 minutes later and has never said anything, and you have no clue what they do. So that's a story. Not a well-told one, but a lot of us do that.
Right.
That's the thing. And then achievements, that's the secret sauce. So what have you actually achieved? And there's a particular way you do that. And for that, I'm going to suggest you get the book.
Yeah. It's interesting. And you talk to a lot of people. Zoom has opened up a whole world of wonderful people to us. And it's opened up a whole world of idiotic liars. Yeah, well, bragger. Well, I look at braggarts as somebody who just really embellishes, not embellishes, but I think there are people who throw things out that are it's just not true.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. And I think that's where we really, it gets a bad rap. Right. And networking is the same thing. It just gets a bad rap because there are the few out there, and those tend to be somewhat memorable. But, being able to delineate, the KTAs, as you put it, the knowledge we have, the things we have learned. And I think we don't give ourselves credit because, well, I know we don't give ourselves credit because when we tend to learn things, I think our mindset becomes, well, I know it and I know it well. Everybody must know it. And that's not true. And it's the same thing with talents. Well, I run in circles with a lot of people who are really good at the law or sales. So I'm not special. Well, you run in a group of 15 people and you're all really good at sales, but the other 8 billion people on the planet aren't, right? And so, and it's kind of the same thing with achievements. They tend to get minimized over time. It's like writing a book. You've written 4, I think is what it is.
11.
11. Okay. I see 4 on the profile you gave me. So you've written 11 books and 3
of them are Amazon bestsellers. Get my brag in there.
All right. No, that's good. That's good. You walk the talk. But I think a lot of people, when they write a book, then all of a sudden they realize other people have written a book. Wow, there's lots of people who've written books. Well, there are, but there's way more who never have. And people are impressed.
Well, that's where that back cover and your bio are just so critical. Because give you a little stat here for those people who are authors or want to be authors or want to improve their sales. Mm-hmm. When somebody walks by your book, your cover has less than a 5-second chance of being recognized. So if it's not really well done, professionally done, you might as well forget it. But then the second thing is they take the book off the bookshelf and flip it to the back cover. And if that back cover isn't bragging, it's not pulling you in the next few seconds, they're not going to buy it, because a lot of books are bought impulsively. So it's critical that you brag, you learn how to brag. And the same in sales. There's a woman I know who called me one time who was very upset. She's a professional speaker, really good at speaking, but she wasn't selling anything on the backside. And for professional speakers, a lot of them have books, workbooks, other programs, and that's where they really make their money. And so she just wasn't getting any takers, any buyers. So I said, oh, well, you know what? This is back in 2010. And I said, I just published this book. Let me take you through how to brag. So we went through the KDAs and then step 4, step 5. And you know what she said to me? That's stupid.
No.
That never work. And I breathed. And then I said, well, if you get hungry enough, you might want to try it. And so you can imagine my surprise. A couple months later, I walk into an event where she's the speaker. And she got her brag on, all right, because the master of ceremonies, the person who was introducing her, was bragging. So before she took a hold of that mic, she had the room. And she did her great, presentation. She's very good at that. And then afterwards, she had people like 2-3 deep. And she catches my eye on my way out. And she goes, Thank you. She mouthed those words. So bragging does work, but we've got to be able to get outside how we've been conditioned to think that we can't talk about what we've achieved. Yeah. We can't brag. We can't acknowledge ourselves for all that we've done.
Well, you use the term sales. That's another one of those words that can have a bad connotation to it. You use the word sales, and people will say, well, I'm not in sales. In reality, we're all in sales.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to convince you to hire me. I'm trying to convince you to give me a raise or a promotion. I'm trying to convince you to go on a date with me or marry me. It goes down the line, borrow my mower, whatever. So it's all sales. And we need to establish that credibility somehow, some way. And so if you're uncomfortable with the term brag, fine, come up with something else. But, you need, why is it important that somebody devote even 15 minutes of their time on a Zoom call with you? There's got to be a reason.
Well, and even just selling our ideas. I mean, a lot of people today, they say they lack the confidence, and many do, but learning how to brag, at least using my book, you will build your confidence, because oh my goodness, I didn't realize I had done all that.
Yeah.
But back to presenting an idea. If I just say, hey, I have an idea, people go, yeah. But if you say, I've been doing this work now for 30 years. And in my experience, 2 people did this, 2 people did that. So here's a suggestion. Guess what? People are going to listen to my idea very differently.
Yeah.
But I just bragged, right?
Yeah. I think people are reluctant to kind of put those things out there because, well, I'll speak for myself. Okay, I'm going to put this thing out there. I've written books. I've done this. And you're a little fearful that somebody's going to come back and say, well, so what? Everybody's done that. And I can feel that in my heart.
Yeah.
And may pull up short of saying everything that's on my mind because I'm worried about that rejection. That's the bottom line. It's rejection. And it never really manifests itself.
There's over a billion. I don't know how many billions of people there are on the planet today.
8. I counted. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's 8.
I have no idea. But I assure you that if you're bragging and you're not being egotistical, some people like to call it humble bragging, like whatever works for you. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're doing it in that manner, the chances of that happening are so rare. It's so rare for somebody to do that to me, because the reality is nobody else has.
Yeah.
How can they? They don't have my life experience. They don't have my education, yada. And I don't have theirs.
Yeah.
So I think I just think it's really weird. And the other thing is, a lot of times we forget that people who have done something similar really are not our competition.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, because I've been hiring now for over 40 years. Well, guess what? I know how to hire. Well, you do, but you also have a lot of turnover right now. So you might want to see how we can reduce that significantly. And then I brag about something I've done or share something. I worked with this $18 million company and took turnover down from 42% down to 26%. Did that in 6 months, saving them $250,000. That's a brag.
Right.
I didn't say I'd done it. I bragged about it, but I didn't do it to be egotistical. I did it to share with them that there may be more available than they're aware of.
Yeah. And I find that when people brag to me, when they share their KTIs, their knowledge, talents, and achievements, well, I try to be a nice person, so I'd never challenge somebody. But I find that I'm duly impressed. Even when I stop and take an inventory of it, and I was like, okay, they haven't done as much as I have or other people, but I'm still duly impressed the fact that they have done it, because I just know that there are so many people who haven't.
Yes.
And I think
there's so many people that need what we have to offer.
Yeah.
That's the critical thing I think we forget. And if we can differentiate ourselves from everyone else that says, hey, I sell Mary Kay, which again, there's nothing against Mary Kay. I use it myself, but hey, I sell Mary Kay versus Arbonne, right?
Right.
Two very popular
Yeah.
makeup lines. But if I go around saying that, people have already shut down. Or if I say, hey, I'm a coach, people aren't going to listen. But if I say, hey, I'm a leadership results coach and along the way guide the creation of 3 millionaires, those people who are interested in that level of game, winning that game, are going to say, hey, Jeanette, tell me more.
Yeah.
And if they're not going to waste your time. They're going to say, okay, good, fine, thank you, bye.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
on somebody else, which is fine.
I would rather know now.
Exactly.
I would rather know now. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I would certainly would rather know now. So, well, let's change gears here now. And this is very, very fitting because this is the point in my podcast where I let my guests brag about themselves. So I do want to learn about the things I want to know. I want you to be able to communicate to the audience the types of things you do and certainly how they can get a hold of you.
Well, as I already shared in an example a few minutes ago, I am a talent advisor and I've been doing it for 40 years. I know how to help people hire the right people and do it in as painlessly as possible. Some people don't look at it that way, but it can happen. Also, I'm an author of the book called Hire Amazing Employees. It's the 3rd edition, Amazon bestseller, and it's an international bestseller. And it's a practical guide on how to hire people, how to really streamline your system and then follow it. It also has in there templates for pre-screen questions, interview questions, reference check questions. And yes, if you do a good job with those reference questions, people will open up to tell you their impression of that person. And all this stuff is very important. So that's what I do. And then I also love talking about bragging. One that recently, earlier this year, just touched my heart, and I was totally unaware of it for several years. But back just as COVID started, I was a keynote speaker for She Leads, which is a wonderfully put together group. And the person who runs it had done a brilliant job of setting up, I would say, the first online conference. I mean, it was just well done. So I was the keynote, get your brag on. And one of the women on there was in her 20s and said, I'm not done anything, I'm too young. And so I shared the same thing that we shared earlier about teenagers. And I said, I don't care how old you are, everybody has done something. And usually when they start writing, it goes from 1 page to 10, right? And so she got on board with that and she wrote, she did the work. And she went through step 4 and 5, which is like, hey, you got to go now share this. Yeah. You can't keep it inside your head. You got to go share it with people. So she did that. And she's a dance studio owner. And I share this because she's been sharing this story for years, unbeknownst to me, where she then, lets people know about the brag book. But what happened is she had one facility, and then out of bragging and really owning all that she had done, pretty soon she had more here in Colorado. But here was the really, really cool part. You ready for this?
Yeah.
So she was invited to choreograph dance on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
All because she learned how to brag.
It's a great
There's
story.
also a lot of stories I've been told where people right after a workshop will go out and close 2 new sales. Now, everybody says they close 2 new ones. Why 2 is the magic number? I don't know. But it's really heartwarming to know that these women and men get out there and share themselves in a new way where they feel good about what they've done. Other people are wowed and impressed and say, I want to work with you. I want to know more about you. Come join our company, like that.
This is great. Best way to get a hold of you, Jeanette?
On my website, which is SODCO, that's S as in Sam, EI, B as in boy, C as in cat, O.com.
I'll get that in the show notes. I know a lot of people drive when they listen to these things, so
Correct.
put the pencils down. It'll be in the show notes.
And then if you go to the book tab, then you'll find the books there, which allows you to then go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or an indie bookstore in the United States.
Great. Jeanette, I really appreciate your time today. This has been great.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.